Hello Year 11 and welcome to this virtual induction day into politics at Holmer Green Senior School. So for those of you who don't know, my name is Miss Harrison. I am Head of Politics and I'm also the second in charge of sixth form. So if you've opted for politics, you're going to find you have quite a lot to do with me. I'm just going to go through some expectations of the course, how it's structured, how to get your best start in studying politics, which is going to be a completely new subject for you guys, and kind of how to best get that foundational knowledge in place before we begin our course formally in September. So the first thing we look at is component 1. This centres on UK politics and makes up your paper 1 exam, which consists of a 2-hour written exam. You will have a choice of 2 different source questions to answer. You will then have a choice of 2 different essay questions to answer, and you will then have a choice of ideologies questions, and I will explain that in a little bit more detail. So you've got 3 papers for your A-level politics, and each is worth a third of the marks towards your qualification. Paper 1 is worth 84 marks in total, so you've got 2 30-mark questions, which is your source question and your essay question, and then 1 24-mark question, which is on ideologies. So these questions will be focused around political participation, and you will be studying the different electoral systems that we have in the UK, looking at how things like general elections work, local elections work, how referendums work, and how those political systems vary depending on where you are in the UK. So the system that we have for Westminster is very different to the devolved bodies that sit in Wales and in Northern Ireland and in Scotland, and we will be comparing those. We also look at voting and what influences people to vote in different ways. So we look at personal history and how that can have an impact on voting trends, as well as the media. So if you're interested in going into something like journalism, this is an amazing unit of work for you. We also dig down into the similarities and differences between the main political parties in the UK as well, and whether or not we have a 2-party system, and the impact that third parties and minor parties can have on the political agenda of the United Kingdom. And we will also look at pressure groups as well, so institutions that are not elected by the general public but that still have an influence over policy. For ideologies, this is where we look into a history of political thought. So we study conservatism, liberalism and socialism, and in your exam you'll have a choice. You must answer 1 question out of a choice of 2. There's no guarantee that they will be on 2 different ideologies. You could have both questions being on conservatism, for example. So we do teach all 3 of those ideologies thoroughly to make sure that you are as prepared for your exam as you could possibly be. Paper 2 is then on UK government. So again, very similar style exam paper, 2 hours, worth a third of your qualification, 84 marks, which is broken down into 2 30-mark questions, 1 that's source-based and 1 that isn't, and then a 24-mark ideologies question. For this, we study the UK government, so we look at Parliament, the Constitution, and how that has changed and evolved. We look at the franchise and expansion of the franchise, the relationship between Parliament, the government, i.e. the Prime Minister and their cabinet, and the judiciary and the power that judges have on the UK political process, which is particularly important thinking about current affairs, and going back now to Brexit, which seems like it was a long time ago, but the influence of the judiciary on that was unprecedented. So we look at those kinds of case studies. We then study anarchism in addition to the other 3 ideologies. This is the only paper you'll be asked about it on, and again you'll have a choice of 2 questions on anarchism, and you answer the one that you feel most confident on. Your paper 3, again, exactly the same style in terms of it's a 2-hour paper, 84 marks. There is no source question on this paper. There's no ideologies question on this paper. So you get 2 smaller 12-mark answers that make up the difference with your 24 marker. So you basically study the US counterpart to everything that we've studied about the UK. So we compare the powers of the Prime Minister with the powers of the President. We compare the powers of Parliament with the powers of Congress, the powers of the UK judiciary with the US judiciary, and how that has evolved throughout history. We then have to explain why those things are different. So putting it into context, looking a bit about the history of the American political system and how that was established, whereas the UK political system has evolved since 1215 and Magna Carta. America had the opportunity to actually create theirs after achieving independence from the British. So it's a comparative paper. What you've learned from units 1 and 2 will build into unit 3. We study this in year 13, so it's making that chronological sense in order to achieve full synthesis between your papers. So I am the only politics teacher that we have. You will have 2 double lessons a week with me in year 12 and in year 13. In year 12 we complete UK politics first without the ideology section, then we complete UK government second without the ideology section, and we usually finish that around Easter before moving on to ideologies before summer, and then year 13 we spend on the American part of the course, which naturally links with revising units 1 and 2. So before September you need to make sure you are prepared. Start off by just buying 1 Lever Arch folder. You will be completing a lot of work in politics. It's not an easy option, especially because you've not studied it before, and that's where the bridging work will come into it, and I'll explain that in a little bit more detail in a second. So start with a Lever Arch folder. A standard ring binder one isn't going to be substantial enough, and you will need a different folder for each unit as we go, but because we do it unit by unit, 1 Lever Arch folder is fine to begin with. You do need to buy a copy of the textbook. It is in the bridging work that I've sent you, the textbook that I need you to buy. We use this in class a lot, so you will need to bring that with you to lessons. Any equipment, rulers, highlighters, stationery, etc., glues, scissors, all really useful, especially in the current climate. We can't share resources, so it's really important that you come prepared. Bridging work. So to start with, politics, because it's a new subject, everyone is kind of on the same foot with where they are in terms of knowing how to answer an exam question, but it's important that you have some contextual knowledge about what is going on in the world. So a lot of your bridging work is very quick, simple quizzes, which I'd like you to try without having a go at Googling the answers first. You won't be graded on it. It's just for my personal interest to see where your areas of strength are and where we perhaps need to do some work on making up some ground with current affairs. You've got some kind of who's who of important political figures to have a go at as well. Please make sure your answers are included in the booklet. And if you need a hard copy of the booklet, drop me an email and I'll pop it in the post to you, but otherwise it's all available online. Then there's some links to what you can be watching to improve your knowledge, and what you can be listening to. Podcasts are fantastic for politics. There's some amazing Instagram pages that you should give a follow as well, and if you haven't already got a Twitter account, set up a Twitter account so that you can follow key politicians and political institutions. In the bridging work, there is also a number of key terms that you need to find definitions for. Because politics is a new subject to you, it is a bit like learning a new language, because there is a lot of key vocab that isn't necessarily within your daily use of language. So it's important to have that base level of understanding for all of us in order to be able to move forward as a group in September. So get as many of those key terms filled out as you possibly can, and then there's some questions that I'd like you to have a go at. And I will expect you to bring evidence of this to our first lesson, because it's a new subject. It's really important that you do take this bridging work seriously. And having a positive attitude, sometimes, especially in the last few years, it can feel like politics is never ending, because it's constantly happening and evolving around us, and that's what makes it such a valuable A-level to study. However, it can feel quite tiring at times in order to keep up with what's going on in the news and what's on social media, and who has said what that has upset who and why. So it's important to have that positive attitude, not letting it get on top of you, especially because there is an election in America happening this year. So even though you won't be studying America until your year 13, you have to have up-to-date examples, and having that awareness of what is going on in the current general election in America is really important. So having that can-do, interested in current affairs attitude is something that I really value above all else. Something that I'd like you to have a go at today is the political compass. So it really doesn't bother me where your beliefs lie in politics, as long as you can support your opinions with examples and back it up with beliefs, rather than just saying, well, I think this because it's what I think. But I always find it really interesting when students do this activity, they don't necessarily come out on the political compass where they think they're going to come out. So I'd really like you to have a go. We won't be sharing our compasses, so it's nothing to be embarrassed about. You will not be expected to openly divulge your political affiliations unless you choose to. We are a broad church as a class, and we respect everyone's opinions, even if they're different from our own. But for your personal interest, I think it's something that is good to have an understanding of where you lie on the political compass. So there's a link to where you can complete that test that I'd like you to have a go at, and screenshot it for me and print it and bring it to your first lesson in September. I'd also like you to have a go at something called I Side With. This website gives you a number of different hypothetical issues, and some of them are more real than others, and you have to say the extent to which you agree or disagree with that statement, and it will then tell you which political party your views are most aligned with, and which kind of politician your views are most aligned with, which again is something really interesting that you probably haven't done before or even given much thought to. So that's what I'd like you to do for your induction activity for today. If you need anything from me, if you're struggling with any of the bridging work, if you are worried about lacking in political knowledge and understanding, anything that happens in the news that you want clarifying, please do get in touch with me. My email address is on the screen. I'm always at the other end of an email. But otherwise, thank you for your time today, and I look forward to welcoming you to my class in September.